Okay, we are live. Welcome to the fifth episode of Turban Talk. Yay! I don't know where this came from,
I don't
but
know. Isn't it
anyway,
Teams?
Ultraman.
Turban
Why
Talk.
are you doing it like this? Is it the same?
I don't know, but I've always done it like this, and we're on our fifth episode now, so what the fuck?
It's gonna stick.
Yeah, it's gonna stick. Okay, so for our fifth episode, we initially wanted to have like a guest speaker on our show. Um,
Nobody wants to come on our show.
I was gonna say that, but I was like, is it too dark? No,
No.
we actually have a few people lined up. It just takes a little bit of time to like organize the logistics and things like that, especially because we live in different countries. So we thought in the meantime, it would be really interesting to interview like each of us, taking a deep dive into each of our lives. And I think, we all have very like, even though we're siblings and we are in the same family and we have such, like we're very similar in so many ways. I think our lives are also so different in so many ways. We're in different stages of life, and it would just be really interesting to take a deep dive into like each of our lives. And so for today, we thought it would be really cool to interview our eldest sister, Didi. I think for me, especially, like Didi is someone like, she's the matriarch in our family. That's what I feel. She's like our rock. She's our eldest sister. For me, she's the person who, I go to for advice and one of the wisest people in my life, according to me. So I think it would be really cool for her to share her journey with all of us, the things she's been through, her transformation, and just her life in general. So, yeah.
I feel really shy. It's like
That-
so nice.
we're
Anyway.
building you up to cry. We build you up first and
So
break you
shy.
down towards the end. Okay, so yeah, everything, of course, everything what Simran said, agree with it 100%. Also, we figured we wanted to give you a chance to get to know each of us better. A lot of you guys probably know who we are already, but I'm sure a lot of new viewers don't really know about us or who we are or where we're from. Um, just to give like a synopsis into the day's life, she is our eldest sister, as Simran mentioned. She is 3.5 years older than me, and she's 10 years older than Simran. So she is in her mid-30s.
You can say I'm
Um,
37.
okay.
What
I
cryptic.
wanted to be polite because there's this thing about women and age and stuff. Okay, so before we come here, and we've been doing it for the past 4 episodes where we just dissect and ask people questions about their life, we figured, we should dissect our own lives as well, and so you get to see the inner workings of us and why we're the way we are. Um, so to kick it off, to start off, I guess we can go back to the very beginning when you were young. I guess my question is like, what was it like for you growing up as the eldest child in our family and being well, first question is the eldest child, and second was, I guess because you're a woman, you're a girl, what was that like? Because you were growing up in the same home as Baba Shah in similar age, and he was a guy. So what was that experience like for you? Or if there's anything you want to add, before you start, feel free.
Hmm.
And just for like the audience's information, that Baba Shah is our first cousin, and we grew up in like a shared house in Bangkok, obviously, and we
Yeah,
all lived together. And Baba Shah and Didi was born like few months apart,
yeah.
and
Yeah. I think in the beginning, like I don't think I really remember, not that I don't remember, but in the beginning there wasn't really anything about being a girl versus boy. It was just like me and Basha. it was like me and Basha against the world, and every day it was just like me and Basha, let's do something together. But I think it came to a point where like there was like some distinct memories that I like recall that I was like, oh, why is it different for him and
Mm.
different for me? And I think that realization happened also after Saab came along, because like by that time I was, 4 or 5, whatever, like understanding more of the world. But one of the biggest memories that come to mind is like, the Diwali thing that they do for boys, and you have like the little box.
The shrine
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
you don't
I
have
don't know.
that.
It's like a shrine with like the guru's
The
photo,
Yeah.
name, yeah,
cars and stuff. So
yeah,
then both of you had one.
yeah.
It had your name on it. It was like engraved, right? Like Sab, Santa Singh, Basha, Bishan, whatever. And I didn't have mine. I was like, and I asked that question. I think I
I
asked
remember.
you or somebody like, where's mine?
Mm-mm.
They just pointed to like a
A
random.
doll.
I don't think it was random, but it was like a
It was a
doll.
doll. Yeah,
It was
I
like a
remember.
little doll, girl ballerina doll kind of thing in a glass box. And they were like, oh, yours is that one. But it's like, I think adults just find a way to like, avoid the deeper question and just like, oh, deflect, like here it is for you. But as a kid, I was like, but it's different, because how come they got to have all these cool things in theirs, and how come they got to have it engraved with their name, mine wasn't, so I kind of knew that wasn't it, but I didn't understand why.
Mm.
So I think that was probably one of the first memories. And then there were other things like they could climb trees, but when I was about to climb a tree, one of the mates would run out and be like, oh, Nimata, no, you can't. I'm like, why? It's like, no, Bibji said, or somebody said you're a girl, you can't. I was like, huh? Or one of you guys would be like riding on the back of Pisom's motorcycle to go,
Oh yeah.
trip around the street, go 7-Eleven, whatever it was. If I wanted to, then again, somebody would come running and say, no, you can't. So things like that, I started to be like, how come boys can do that and I can? Like, why? What's wrong?
Yeah.
Mm. And like, did you innately know back then that it was like or did you just not understand it? You were
I
just
just
like
thought like
questioning.
I just thought like, oh, boys are lucky. Boys get to do more things. There was a period in life where I just dressed like a boy. I wanted to be a boy. I pretty much
Mm.
like was like twinning with Basha, twinning with Saab, all of my outfits pretty much like were like baggy clothes, big shirt. I wore a cap. For the longest period, even throughout my teens, I was really like a tomboy, because for me, it just occurred like, oh, if you're a boy, you just get to do everything. And a
Mm.
girl, somebody's going to come and stop you and say, you can't do that because you're a girl. And I didn't understand why. So I just concluded that it's better to be a boy.
Yeah.
How do I say? Like, I think I just felt like invincible as well, like anything's possible for me too. So I never put a limit on myself that, oh, I can't do it because I'm a girl. Like, other people put that limit, or they try to, but
Mm.
I always fought it. I never surrendered to that kind of like limit that they were putting on me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so great. And so like, did you ever feel the pressure to like have to grow up or like be mature very quickly because of the pressure that like you're the eldest, you're in charge of us, so you have to take care of us. Like, did you feel like you just have to grow up very quickly?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think it was like, I think I was trying to find like, what is my role? Because like when Saab came, then Saab became the focus, became the, like the new center of attention. And I was, you know,
Mm,
how do I find my place in this new dynamic? And so
mm,
I don't know. I think maybe it was the default role. I just became like the studious one, like the one that like,
yeah.
oh, this girl, like good girl, good grades, like the good kind of label.
Mm.
You weren't always like that?
I don't know. I
Or
feel
we were born.
I
She
feel like
wasn't.
I feel like I was more mischievous.
Yeah.
La.
know.
I don't know you in that version.
Well,
It's very
you
understandable.
you came and took it
I
away.
don't know, man. Yeah,
I just
whatever.
remember you like not from a very young age, but I think for me, like there was a shift. Because when I was growing up, like my relationship with you, like
Do.
at one, no, in the beginning, like I didn't even relate that you were my sister. Who is this girl? Like we don't talk. Like she's just living in this, like I'm living in her room. She
I was
doesn't
like,
talk to me. She treats me like dirt. Like, เข้าใจปะ like we used to stay in the same room and she was a high school student and I was like probably in primary school and at 3 4 a.m. like she would be like talking on her phone, turn on the lights, walking around in the room, and I would be like, do I exist? Like am I crazy?
I mean, they only put us in the same room because we're both girls, but there was
Yeah.
nothing in common between the two of us. And like, she was
Yeah.
into I just couldn't get into like Teletubbies or like it's like I don't know what to talk to this person about. Like,
I think we probably didn't talk for like until I was like quite older. Like we had very minimal interaction, but from my memory, like, there was a big shift from you becoming like some random person to like, oh, like she's my sister and she's like, like I want to get to know her more. But after that, I feel like you probably like from the start, like you played a very assertive role in our family from my memory. Like, even on family vacation or anything like that, daddy would be like, oh, let's ask Didi, does she agree with this? Does she want to do this? Like from my memory, it's like you've always played a very assertive role in the family of like influencing both mommy and daddy. Yeah.
Me also. Actually, she influences everybody, dude,
Yeah.
without us knowing it.
Yeah. And I think that brings me to like my next point that like, I think for me, the way I've looked at you as a kid is like you've always been someone who like you just went for what like you just went for what you wanted. Like you just went for it, you just go for it. And I think like you were the first person in our family, the first woman, the first person, from what I know, our ancestor to like kind of like disrupt the chain or disrupt the cycle of like what you want in life. At that time you were like, no, like I'm not getting married. I'm not gonna have a kid, like, my career. And I want to travel the world, first stop is Singapore, then I'm gonna go to Australia, UK, whatever. Like you were so adamant about that. And that was like so inspiring at the time. But can you share a little bit about like how did you get to that point of like, wanting to be independent, or what was your motive behind it?
yeah, I think, because my university years was in Australia, right? And I was in a relationship at that time, like in a long-term relationship. And the person I was dating was also studying in Australia. And we came back to Bangkok at the same time. And at like firstly that disconnect, because in Australia, like everything I did was just me. I didn't Sure, mommy lives in Australia at the same time, but I didn't live with her. I lived in a dorm. So it was my terms, my hours, my like I could go anywhere, I could do anything, I could fly to the city that he was living, he could fly to come see me, we could go on vacation, like life was mine.
Like, as in like it was different from when you were in Bangkok.
Yeah, different for sure. Like because anyway, like in high school, you have limited freedom. Like you can go to
Yeah.
major Ikamai Emporium, but then yeah, that was like my first taste, I think, of freedom and like life on my own terms. And because I worked as well, like I earned money, then I came back to Bangkok and found a job in advertising. And I still had that expectation that like, or desire that like, okay, I'm earning my own way, but then why do I have to stick to these rules that have been placed upon me? So it became more difficult for me and my ex at the time to like hang out. We had to kind of sneak around a bit more. You all know this. I mean, things have changed now, but we couldn't go on trips. Just us. There was just like, I don't know. It was that like suffocating feeling of like, oh, now I can't. be my
Yeah.
own person. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people expectations, people watching, blah blah blah. Anyway, so I think like I stayed in Bangkok like that for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it got to a point in the relationship where like I've met his family, he's met like the main people in my family. Like the next logical step was like getting engaged and getting married. And it really freaked me out. Like people were excited for me. They were like, "Oh, you've been together for like I don't know, 5 years or whatever by that point." Like everyone knew it was like, oh, Nimmy and da da da, these two are gonna end up together. But that thought didn't excite me. It freaked me out completely because all I could see was like life after marriage. I'm just gonna become this woman who goes on like the monthly share. I don't even know what that is. Like, what is it? What do people do? I've never been part of a share group. So I have to
Kitty party.
oh, this thing. And like, I would become that woman who goes to parties and get dressed up and care, buy things and have conversations that I don't really care about. Like, I only saw that was the future. And I was just like, no, I cannot have that be my future. I hate everything about it. That is not me. That is not my life. Like, and so I just decided like, this is not it. Thailand hasn't got what I wanted,
Mm.
and that became really clear. Like Thailand is not my place. Bangkok's not my city. Like Australia is good or anywhere else is good. And I think, I really believe like when you send out an intention to the universe or when you really believe something like wholeheartedly, life just has a way of like lining it up for you, like it was at
Mm.
that point where I remember it was 2010. I was like, I left my advertising job to join a nonprofit because I thought, I want to change the world. I always had that desire. I wanted to like do something, make a difference, change the world. And that nonprofit job was so shitty that I left in less than 3 months. I didn't even pass my probation. I just like, I can't. So I quit that job, broke up with my ex-boyfriend. Like everything was happening at that time, And I remember a mentor of mine who was like an ex-boss. He called me up and he said, "Hey, I've got something I want to run by you. Why don't we catch up?"
Mm.
We're sitting there, having drinks at his apartment, and he said to me, I want you to remember this moment, Nimi, because one day when you look back to this moment, this will be the moment. I hope that this will be the moment that changes everything for you. You will look back in your life and remember this moment as this was the pivotal point in your life. He
Mm.
goes, there's a client Unilever. We've got this opportunity in Singapore. I can't think of anyone better to recommend than you, and then it kind of happened from there. But it was so cool because I look back at that moment and he was right. Like that was the moment where everything changed. And I remember when I told daddy and mommy, it wasn't a question. I was like, hey, everyone, I'm moving to Singapore. Like it wasn't a discussion. It wasn't like, what do you think? I was just like, okay, I have to take this step now. It has to be a radical step because the life that was going to happen by default, I wasn't okay with it. Mm.
Mm.
So ever since
Yeah,
I
wow.
moved to Singapore was 2011, I didn't live in Bangkok again.
It's just so inspiring though. Like I feel like for you to realize at such a young age exactly what you didn't want it.
Mm.
And I would say it's not like not as a judgment, statement, but it's a something that a lot of girls want, crave for, but it's something that you knew this was not it for me. Like I wanted more in life,
I was 23. I was like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And to move abroad and live all by yourself, get an apartment, like it's just such a big, okay, like if you look at it from people in Australia, that's like normal. But if you look at our family, our culture, like that's a really big deal.
Not normal, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really big deal.
But point is like, did they also have to like, she couldn't just be like rebel mode from 13 to
Yeah, like
whatever,
fuck
you know what I
everyone.
mean? She had to be like, oh, okay, like, okay, I have to move. Okay, mom, can you come see the place? Okay, dad wants to see where I'm living. Okay,
Yeah,
dad, okay, approve, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
You know, there were still like small compromises willingly just to make it smooth, which I think a lot of people, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah,
I think that's one thing I found really inspiring about Didi is like, even though she knew exactly what she wanted and she was 100% sure she was going for it, she was never like what you said, Abhijit,
like
like,
ignore the
or-
consequences, right?
yeah, or like,
It
you
wasn't
know,
like a
everyone fuck off. I don't care
Yeah,
about you.
yeah, yeah,
Fuck
yeah.
you. Like
Because
it was
that,
like
yeah,
she did it in a very like graceful way that like I still love everyone in my family, but this is just what I want from my life.
it
Yeah.
made it feel like an actual choice,
Yeah,
not something you had to do. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Not
exactly.
like another prison you built for yourself, but kind of like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, I like this path. I want to go here. What's it
yeah,
gonna take for me to go
yeah,
here? And you just did whatever it took. You
yeah,
didn't, oh, I'm not gonna say, you know, you like,
yeah. And
mm,
I mean that for everything, like when you decided to break up with your like ex-partner, I think a lot of like almost everyone in the family was kind of against it.
There was an intervention, literally, like
Yeah, everyone was
what?
like, what are
there
you
was an
doing?
intervention, yeah.
What? Where was that? I didn't even know
Was
about
that
this.
at home? Like people came over like a usual Sunday thing, and
Like
then
girls, all the women. What
certain
the fuck?
people sat around me. I don't know if everybody. Yeah, probably women. No, but I
There
don't.
were guys as well.
I can't remember. Yeah, there was some of the cousins as well, and like some of the aunts and stuff.
Yeah.
But it
I
was an
didn't know
actual
this.
intervention, like
I remember like
you
people were
this.
saying stuff. I remember people saying like I heard like few people saying like, oh, like they weren't talking to
Because there
me.
wasn't really a good reason,
I
It's
just
not
had,
like something happened that was like a
oh
big.
yeah, I remember.
I was just like, I can't.
Yeah, I remember a lot of people being against your decision. I think even I was because I was so young. And for
I know.
me, I'm
I
like,
know.
oh, like, aren't you gonna get married? Like, isn't that what it's supposed to be? And you're like, this is not even close to like what it should be. I remember that very, very clearly, like when you said it to me. But yeah, it was so inspiring. Looking at your journey from like when you were living in Singapore and how many years that was and moving to Australia and now you're married with a kid, like
One
what was your
husband,
what was your
one kid.
journey like in like getting here? The context I wanted to give was just like, I think after that you were like in a phase where you were like, I'm never getting married, I'm not gonna have a kid. Um, and all the aunties like mama boy, everyone was like, no, that like you have no
Yeah,
idea what you're saying, like no one believes you.
Really like sure.
Even at that time I remember like your username on Instagram was like an unsettler,
unsettler. Yeah, I remember
like,
you
and you
were.
had a blog like of fries and men where you wrote like your journey and like dating and like it was just so like that was just I think such a but it's just such a vivid memory for me.
I think it's like and now I know better, right? But I think at that time it's like, and I think most people do this, when you go a certain path, I was in a committed relationship for 5 years, we're heading down a certain path, and then all of a sudden you realize, hang on a minute, that path's not working. All you've got available to you is like, oh, if this is not working, I'll just do the opposite of that. It was like, I have to now not be in a relationship, do everything to not be in a relationship. Um, I think it took like, only when I moved to Australia and I did Landmark, and some people may have heard about Landmark, some people haven't. We all have done Landmark and we've spoken about it in previous like episodes, right? But one of the things I saw in that Landmark course was, the opposite of something is still trap.
Yeah,
It's
still.
still the opposite of the same coin,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But
Understood.
true freedom is the ability to choose it any way at all, any way at all. Not about rebelling, not about trying to not be something, but it's about like authentically, who do I want to be in life and
Mm,
what calls to me,
mm,
and
mm.
throughout like the different courses of Landmark, like I got to see that I actually want somebody, by that time I was about, I don't know, 28 or something. It's like not about wanting to rush and get married, nothing like that, but I authentically wanted to be with someone. I'm like a relationship kind of girl. I'm not a fling kind of person. And I
Mm.
had to like it gave me the space to be vulnerable with myself and
Mm.
realize that that's actually what I want. So when I realized that, it's just like, okay, well, what are the actions now to take? You know, I remember I went on like dating sites, like proper dating sites where you have to pay, you know, eHarmony, like sounds so lame. I was so nervous, but I went on actual dates with the intention of like
eHarmony?
interested now. Yeah.
Never heard of it before.
Did you
Yeah,
ever
it's like
apply
for
for like
people who are serious. You know, I purposely didn't go on Tinder because I'm like, no, I'm not looking for a fling. I'm looking for something serious. Um, and then, you know, funnily enough, I met Anand in one of the landmark courses. And because he was Indian, I kept, it's like, you know, like ignore, don't go for this guy. He's Indian, he's eating dal from a container, he's eating cut fruit. He's definitely a mama's boy, you know. Then I find out he does live with his mom. You know, I didn't know it was his house, but it's just like everything was like, oh, Indian, you know. And I had this always this vision of Indian men, like they're entitled, they just do whatever they want. They don't care about their partner. They're not really loving and attentive. You know, like the picture you build up from like whatever you see. So I was very much like, no, like anti-Indian
mm,
again. And that was another part of like, you know, what I transformed was like, how could I just base on, it's like my own, you know, I created that. Like, sure, there were Indian men who fit in that, but you know, am I arrogant enough to say that all Indian men, or presumptions enough to say all Indian men are like that? Like, really? I'm gonna now like put a blanket description over everybody. So I got to see that as well, that like, oh, like I'm just being really prejudiced against Indian. Like, that's pretty shit. So I remember calling Anand up and apologizing, like, hey, you may not, you know, you don't know this, but I've been like secretly judging you just because you're Indian. You know, I'm really sorry. Like, you know, we should be friends.
Oh.
And then I kind of started to see like qualities in him that I really like, you know, like who he was, how like the way he thought, the way he spoke, how kind he was. And yeah, like when we connected, like the deeper level, when I let go of all those like biases, that's when I was like, oh wow, like damn, like
But yeah, I
yeah, no,
think like the other point that I wanted to make is like, you know, it inside your journey of like from going to moving from Singapore to Australia and like going from like, you know, I don't want to marry, I don't want to date anyone, I don't want to marry an Indian guy to like finally be able to like accept that like, oh shit, like I actually want to be in a relationship, you know, I want to be with someone and this is what I want for my life. And you know,
you
like
still
I don't want to be a rebel anymore. Like I don't remember what point it was exactly, but when you were living in Singapore and you just did landmark, or was it in Australia? No, it was in Australia,
Singapore,
right?
Australia?
Yeah,
yeah.
it was when you just moved to Australia and you did landmark. Like there was a point where you just switched.
Mm.
And I remember it very vividly, like the way you were with us, the way you were with mommy, with
A
daddy, like
switch personality, right?
she just switched. But just to give like the audience a bit of context, like she was always a wonderful person, you know, but I think like before that, for example, like she like the deal with someone who she doesn't like to hug, you know. So if you try to hug her, she'd be like, like no, don't touch me. And I remember like when you did landmark and after that when you came to Thailand, you were like just coming to each of us and like hugging us so deeply, or like the way you spoke to mommy, like you know, you and I, all
Um,
of us, like we get so triggered with
yeah,
mommy
yeah.
sometimes, but the way you treated mommy was completely different. The way you spoke to me, even like you and I used to like, you know, we got along, but they were like, how do I like bickering a lot of like um, but then like after that moment, like after you did landmark, or you know, that period of your life, like you came back and even you and I were completely different. Like you just switched, you know. And I remember us all like having a conversation about it, that did this become like someone else, you know, like
Yeah,
someone better, of course.
yeah. I remember a lot of people came to say to me as well, like, oh, wow, your sister is amazing. I'm
Mm.
like, yeah, nice,
Uh,
nice.
but I
Yeah.
just remembered that to be like a very, I guess, like turning point in
Yeah.
like how I see you. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember as well because it was like it was a switch. It really was, it's
Yeah.
3 days, you walk out and you're like, whoa, like everything I've ever believed to be true is
Mm,
up. It's like you don't have it, isn't true. Everything I believed about myself, everything I made up that this world is like this, people are like this, men are like
Mm-mm-mm.
this, I'm like this, my mom is like this, everything is like gets flipped on its head. It's like the most awesome life
yeah.
thing I've ever done in my life. Sorry, I look back just now because there's a little bug just walked.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah.
That was scary.
I was like, is it a cockroach? Because I have to run if it is. Yeah, so it really was like a defining moment. Like for me, it's hard to talk about my life without talking about Landmark because it's very clear there's like life before Landmark and life after Landmark. That's how
Completely different.
it really, like you said, was a switch. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other point I think I wanted to bring up in this episode is like, you went from being like a tomboy to like sort of a rebel to like, being so independent, like
Mm.
going out there and doing what you want into like finding yourself and accepting what you want and what you want in this life. And now, like, you're married, you have a beautiful daughter, you bought a house. So like from dating Anand until now, like what was that journey like? Or, even like having Eliana, what was that like?
I think it was like, I keep wanting to use the word lucky, but it's not luck, is it? Like, it was really cool that me and Anand, we had that foundation of coming from like the similar language, similar tools from Landmark, because that
Mm.
really made a difference to our communication. I can be really straight and say, if we hadn't had that, I don't think the marriage would have lasted.
Mm,
Because my default is, as you've described correctly, like my default is very much independent. I'm gonna do it my way, or like I'm out, or like I'm gonna find a way to do it my way. But you can't be that person in a marriage. You can't be this independent, I'm gonna live my life, screw everything else. So there was a lot of adjustment between me and Anna, like the ability to communicate, the ability to resolve things, because there's so
Right.
many times where we're in the middle of like an argument and I think to myself, like, there's no way to come back from this. Like we can only just it has to break from here, because this is such a big thing and it's so important to each of us. And like we're not gonna need, who's gonna compromise, like how is this gonna end? Like there were so many moments where he thought that and I thought that, but we managed to work through it. So I'm
mm.
really proud of that. I'm really proud, like I think the most proud thing in my life, I'm proud of like my marriage, our relationship.
Going from like, I'm never gonna have a
Never
kid.
gonna have a baby to
Yeah,
like now you can't imagine yourself not being a
yeah,
mother,
exactly.
living through all those stigmas because moms like I also learned so many things from you because women wouldn't talk about it, right? People
Yeah.
back then they wouldn't share, at least not to me. I didn't know all this stuff,
Mm.
you know, and all this like double standard to like, oh, if you're pregnant, you shouldn't complain. All this little nitbit stuff. Like if I imagine I'm going through it as a guy, I would just be like, who the fuck are you to tell me how to feel? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And just realizing this and realizing it's been like 30 plus years where I have not been exposed or even aware of this reality at all. How many women have had to keep quiet or not had the space to say it, or I don't know, man. It dawned on me and I was like, whoa, like it's just a shocking revelation because you can't imagine men. I
No.
mean, men have their own thing that they, keep quiet about and whatever, but yeah, it's just a whole new world open up for me when I saw all this. And you were the one who
Mm.
like, showed it.
Yeah, it still shocks me now till today. Meaning I'm still shocked by how are people doing this? How are mothers doing this? But yeah, I'll kind of come to that. But you guys are here. Like I've said, I don't want to have a kid. I don't want to have a kid, blah, blah, blah. I never woke up. I mean, I know some people are really like, they really want kids. And, I never woke up with that feeling of like, wow, I really want a kid. never, even till the day we decided, okay, well, let's have a kid. Like, it was very pragmatic and logical that, okay, you know, we are planning to have a kid. Like, this is how old I am now. I mean, do you want me to go? Like, how detailed do you want me to go? Do I just skip the pregnancy stuff?
Up to you. What do you think will help or make a difference, or what do you think is worth sharing to the world or to people 5 years younger than you, 10 years younger than you, or if Eliana would have watched this when she was like older, you know, whatever.
I think the thing that really sticks out about my birth, one of the things is like, you know, my whole life is like, I was taught to like be conservative, you know, wear a shirt underneath your uniform because don't, you know, God forbid someone can see the lining of your bra, or like wear shorts, you know, and never wear like anything, any skirt that's shorter than knee length. And I was so protected, like, and during birth, it was like everything was hanging out. Like, nobody gave a shit. I had a rope, but like nobody gave a shit that it was like, you know, it was coming out. I wasn't wearing anything. It's like, woo, like I remember being there and thinking like, if mommy was here, like what would she
You'd
think?
freak out. Everything was on vacation.
And it was like, what was the whole point of being like that my whole life? And then for this moment to like let it all loose, you know? And yeah, even the birth wasn't straightforward. Like, you know, I asked for the epidural, then it impacted Eliana's heart rate. You know, we had like a whole team of people rush in because her heart rate was dropping. I developed a fever, so people were worried about what's happening,
Eliana.
infection. You know, the doctor wouldn't bring the doctor who was going to deliver didn't want to deliver Eliana until a pediatrician came on standby, because I think they kind of knew, you know, like they needed to, she was going to need special attention.
Mm.
So, you know, and it's like, how do you know how, you know, you think you know how to push, but when you're there and your whole bottom half of your body is numb, people telling you to push, like, you don't know if is it happening or not, you know. In the end they had to use like forceps, which is like, I didn't really look at what it is, but I guess it's like a, I don't know, an instrument where you like grab the
Right.
baby and pull.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that, they had to like cut. It's called an epiostomy.
Episiotomy.
Yeah, you have to cut. And you know, the funny thing is that Anand was there next to me and he was looking through everything. Then when they were gonna do the cut, they said to Anand, "Oh,
Don't look.
okay, yeah." And he was kind of like, "Look, I'm looking at everything already." It's like, it's okay. So they made the cut. I'm so grateful that I was on drugs at that time.
Oh yeah.
When they did that, because I didn't feel it. You know, when Ileana came out, it was like, it was surreal. It was like like, you know, I gave birth to this person. Like, what? This came out of us. So there was like that high. And you know, like, it's, I mean, you guys get it because you play sports, but you know, when you're in the game, like I was a performer, as a person giving birth, I was a performer. I was there to do a job. So I had to get this job done. I didn't have the space to be worried or stressed, or
Oh yeah.
because I was just like, I have to perform. Like I'm in that zone, adrenaline, whatever. It would have been different for Anand, you know, it was much more traumatizing to be the one witnessing, and like, you know, he was really worried, like at some point, that are we gonna be okay, the both of us? But I think for me, the trauma of it only hit after, you know, like we held her, you know, she was feeding from me, and all the nurses left the room. Only the pediatrician was kind of standing in his corner doing his thing. And she was just like, you know, I could feel her little tiny movements, like nibbling on me, whatever. And then it just stopped. And, you know, I play this moment back. You know, she's 20 months now. I still play this moment back like every, I don't know, I say at least once a week, because I said, oh, it looks like she stopped sucking, stops feeding. Is that okay? I said this to the doctor. And he without turning, he said, yeah, that's fine. She's probably full or tired, whatever he said. And then he had a moment of like, he suddenly just turned around, you know, like really quick turn. He just turned and eyeballed Eliana. And he was like, you know, maybe like 5 steps away. He eyeballed her and he ran over to me, picked Eliana up like a kitten, you know, like on the neck like that. And
Mm.
you could see her body was like limp. She was turning blue, like she was blue. And he ran and picked her up and ran to his station, put a little oxygen mask on her and shouted to me and Anand, like, call the nurses, you know. Anand ran outside. I hit the whatever emergency button. People ran in. And in that moment, like my eye was glued to the little monitor because you know you've
The heart rate, right?
you've seen in medical shows, right? You're like, okay,
Yeah.
but it was still very surreal. It was like an out of body experience. And I just kept eyeing on that. And I saw that like within seconds, it was up and down, you know, she was breathing. But I was also like, how long did, you know, like, you know, we learn about it takes 6 minutes for the brain to have damage if you lose
Oh
oxygen.
yeah, yeah.
But for a newborn, like, well, how long, you know? So that whole thing, like the worry, she had to be in special care, you know, it was like, there was like a lot of things that happened with the nurses that they weren't really honoring my request to breastfeed. They kept like trying to give her formula, even, you know, they finally stuck a tube down her throat. Like it was so traumatic, that whole experience. And like, but there's nothing to, you know, it's like you just expected to like, well, now your mom just live, just well, now just soldier on, you know, just like, okay, now you're back home and here's here's your, like, good luck. That's what I felt like. It was like, whoa, I just had the most like fucking like, like the most intense 5 days of my life. I almost lost my baby. I like, and then now I just go home and it's like,
Everything's back to normal.
yeah,
Like
and then
new normal.
yeah, and then you're meant to be like on a high of like being in love with the baby or being, I wasn't there. It wasn't like that for me at all. It was so hard. It was like the hardest thing. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's like becoming a mom and like
Mm.
what now, you know? Sure, you know, people ask you, like you do it, there's a checkup appointment and they go, oh, how are you? They fill out some form about your mental health, but it's like I don't think it really gets deep enough, or I really don't. It's like, you know, I remember the only person in that hospital, like you came, Simran, you know, you guys came, you were really supportive, even though you didn't get to like, you couldn't hold Eliana, but you all came. People came every day. But the only person like from the hospital was one of the midwives who she saw me and like, you know, she was my midwife from like this whole pregnancy. She was like there. By the way, you know, I never knew what a midwife was. So if anyone of you listening to this, you don't know what a midwife is, it's okay. Apparently there's like the doctor, the OBGYN who's like, they will deliver your baby, but a midwife is also qualified enough to deliver your baby. They're not a doctor, they're not a nurse, they're just like specialized in like, you know, birth and
Natural birth.
so I had the practice that I went to had both, you know, had the doctor and had the midwife. So she was the midwife and she was on duty that day. You know, I think it was like day 3 or whatever. And she came over to me. I was standing with Eliana. She was in her little, you know, connected to all the tubes, and she has like all the, you know, like, like things inserted into her. I don't know. It's just like really like sad to see a little baby like all hooked up. And then this midwife came to me and she just looks at me. She goes, how are you? And I just burst into tears and we just hugged. It's like, but aside from that, like I feel like after that, it just all became about the baby. You know, it was just like, okay, now we got to take care of the baby. But like I'm there having, it's like I'm still there.
Yeah.
Like a shell of a person going like, what just happened to me? Like, like what was that? You know, like, and no one talked about that. No one. And I didn't know that. I just thought, oh, okay. You know, I remember asking the doctor, she goes, oh, that was a quick delivery. I'm like, oh, okay. You know, because we were induced at 8 a.m. She came out by 4 p.m. Like, oh, that was good. That was a good delivery. You know, like even she was like, this was good. So it was almost like I was like, is this me? I'm just being dramatic. Like, you know, it was only later, much later, when I learned that there's such a thing called like birth trauma. I
Mm.
groups, you know, I started to understand, and you know, that's why 3 months later I wrote a letter to the hospital outlining everything they did that like wasn't okay. And I asked them, you know, I don't want an apology. I want to know, what are you going to do about this so that
Mm.
another mom won't experience what I went through. And you know, they called me in to have a chat, and they actually let me know, like, here's all the things we're doing differently. We're putting these programs in to retrain our staff. You know, we know that they weren't compassionate towards you, blah blah blah. Like, you know, so I would, and now like how it is as a mom, it's like still the most toughest, still the most like the toughest thing ever, because you know, I think someone like me who's like independent, I have a plan, I do what I want to do, I do my thing. It's like everything's thrown out every day, you know, because if she doesn't sleep, if she doesn't nap, if something happens, like, you know, it just doesn't go the way I plan, or my productivity, like I haven't had a full night's sleep in 20 months. You know, no matter how much of a night owl you are, you think that it's going to equip you. I thought like that. Nah, it doesn't. You know, you start to become like, I feel like I became more dull, you know, like not dull, but like dulled down. I was less sharp. I used to be able to come up with answers on the spot when I speak to a client. Now it's like, no, I need days to reflect and think. My memory is not as good. Like everything became like, you know, like a more dulled version of me. And I would like, you know, the other day I was saying to Mommy about it's like, there's, I don't know, and I don't know if it's like, I don't know if every mom feels this, but definitely it's true for me. What, you know, you look at yourself and you go, what's actually going well here? Like, I'm not back to the same figure that I was. Like, you know, my body's completely different. There's going to be things about my body that will never be the same again, no matter what I do, no matter how much weight I lose. Like, you know, when you breastfeed, your boobs are gonna sag. Like, newsflash, nobody told you that, but now you know, you know. Your hips have like, the shape is going to be a bit, you know, it's changed because it's made room to push out a baby or whatever. So things are always going to be different. And so that you know, that department is not where I want it to be. It's not like my career is skyrocketing. My house is not, it's like it's spotless. There's always like, you know, there's still mess, there's still blah blah blah. And it's not like we're the most romantic, intimate, like how we used to be. You know, I feel like I'm less connected to family. I haven't really spoken to a lot of family. I'm not the same, you know, how you guys call me like the matriarch. Haven't really felt like I was that person in the last 20 months. I feel like I was so dimmed down, and I still feel that way. You know, like who I am as a person who makes a difference, like the leader in me, the person who's always up for like, you know, let me make a difference or empower somebody. I'm not really doing that at the moment. Like I look at every area in my life and I was like, what's working? Everything is so mediocre or shit. And but it's still so overwhelming. And I have help. I have somebody living with us. We have mom next door. Like, how is anyone else doing this? You know, like I just don't understand. And I spoke to someone who, like, she runs programs for new moms, and I was sharing with her, you know, how are people doing it? And she goes, no one is doing it. You know, everybody's really struggling. Most of the new moms here are either on anxiety or antidepressant meds or both. They're all trying to hold it together. They're all hanging by a thread. One little thing, it's just gonna shatter it all. Like no one is doing it. But we're not talking about that. Even I'm not talking about that with, you know, like I see there's other new moms in my life and I look at them and I go, wow, they're so happy and it's so natural for them. Like, but I feel like left out. Like, I feel like, did I miss the memo? Like, wasn't I born to do this? Wasn't this the most like, I don't know, like, wasn't this meant to be natural and like
rewarding and
yeah, all of that. But like, yeah, it's still really, really tough.
Yeah. I think even in our society, like growing up, like, our aunties, our cousins, whoever had baby, like I never really knew how hard it was until like you shared it with me as well. Like
Mm,
for me, it always seemed like, oh, like they had a baby, they seem fine. Like you actually never know like the insights of it, of how difficult it is, or maybe it was difficult for them and they never shared it, or maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But yeah, like I never learned of this until you shared it with
yeah,
me,
same.
of like how hard it is,
Mm.
for not just for mom, but like parents, new parents in general.
Mm.
Uh,
Just
yeah,
like having a new family in general, I guess.
yeah.
Yeah. Like, do you think they like people in the past, they didn't talk about it because they just didn't feel like they had the space, or was it more like, oh, like I don't want to be the one to spill the beans first? You know
Mm.
what?
I think I think people were just making themselves wrong, that like the problems with them.
That they felt it
Yeah.
this way, right?
Yeah, because I think, now that I've like delved deeper into like this whole space of motherhood, and like how did this notion of motherhood, that we had to be perfect and be this and be that, I'm kind of getting more into it. It's like almost like an unspoken expectation that as a mother you should enjoy it, you should you know then fulfill and all these other things. So then I think people just end up feeling like me. What about, oh, I'm failing at this, you
Mm,
know. So they're not gonna go and announce it because they're like, oh, I'm failing at this. It's me. I better.
Ah, yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think
But
that's,
also because they probably like you said, they're under the impression that maybe it's just them, right?
yeah, I think
Because there's
so.
no like transparency and
So there's like a lot of shame and guilt
yeah,
associated.
yeah, 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 that makes
A
sense.
lot. Yeah. I mean, Eliana is with me. Like she's at home. I'm at home. I work from home. I only go out, to go to the gym. Or like, weekly we have a date day, me and Anand, or sometimes we'll go out, Mostly she's here with me. I still feel guilty. Am I present enough with her? Am I spending enough time with her? Like every day, apparently guilt is just like a thing that's embedded to being a mom.
yeah, yeah, เข้าใจ.
Yeah.
And it's also like having your whole life, like, from having your life as like the main like thing that you put energy to, like this is your life, you do what you want. Every day you wake up, you think about, okay, what do I want to do today? This is what I'm gonna do during my weekend. This is where I'm gonna go during my vacation. And having a kid just changes everything.
Yeah.
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 I guess to finish off, like, is there anything that you want to say to, I guess, younger women in our society who, I don't know, maybe want to do like similar things you've done, or young moms, or just anything in general?
Or future Eliana.
Mm. Like I think for me, all I knew at that time was like I just had to leave. I just had to get out of Bangkok because it wasn't giving me, I couldn't have the life I wanted here, there, whatever. But I feel like knowing what I know now, I don't, you don't have to leave basically. Like you don't have to flee. You don't have to think, oh, I can only have a good life if I'm in that place, or if I move away, or da da da. I feel like at any point in your life you can stand for what you want, and you will always be met, like when you're paving a way for something that hasn't been done before, you will always be met with doubts, people not agreeing with you, people saying it can't be done, you shouldn't do it. Like that is a good sign, that is the best sign, because now you're doing something that's like out of comfort zone now, out of the ordinary now. And I really believe like if you want to make a change, it can only happen when you're walking against the current, or against what's already happening. Don't I guess like don't get discouraged by people saying you can't. Everything
Mm,
I've ever done has always had people telling me you shouldn't and you can't.
mm,
Like quit this job, no, you shouldn't quit this job, or don't break up, or don't leave, don't move countries. don't quit your job during COVID. You know, like everything I've done has always been that. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I feel like think of it as a good sign if your people are telling you don't.
Yeah. I actually felt like I really needed to hear that. So thank you.
So there you go. That was a message tailored to you.
Mm.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to say before we finish off the episode or
I think the one thing that I want it to be left with is like, yes, this episode was about me because I was being interviewed, but it's not about me. I don't, if you know, I don't want your takeaway to be, oh, you know, that was a cool story about this Indian girl from Thailand. Like, it's not a story about me. It's a story about what's really possible. You know, because my default life was not this. And I'm not saying my life is at a point where it's perfect, but it's like, it's just like not settling. I think it's still a theme. You know, I think I could still go back to my Instagram and
and
I
unsettled?
return
When you woke, you awoke in the unsettler again.
never went away.
She can revive, bro. Oh my God.
I really think it's that. I really think it's like, you know, please don't, it's like this could really become like just an ordinary interview of a person, you know, some bio. Like if you're left with that, then we fail here. Then this episode I failed to do my job.
Don't let her fail, guys. She doesn't do well with failure.
Okay, I'm gonna end the episode then.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you to all of you for listening to this episode. If any one of you has any suggestions about what we should be talking about in our next episode, feel free to let us know in the comments or message us. And you know, if you want to share anything with us at all, like your thoughts, or if you want to be on our episode, feel free to let us know as well.
Yeah, feel free to line up with like 10 other people who are waiting, knocking on
Yeah.
Yes, we have received comments and messages already, and on topic suggestions. We haven't forgotten about you or those. We're just trying to line up, you know, the right guests. And as Simi mentioned, sometimes with logistics and timing, it may take a little bit more time than we anticipated. But definitely we will be continuing this podcast, and yeah.
Yeah. And also I think like, you know, we want this to be an ongoing thing where like, you know, well obviously like this is our first podcast and we're learning things as we're doing things. So if you have any like comments or suggestions or anything, like feel free to let us know as well.
like if you think Sab's background is too cluttered,
Yes. Holy shit, this is the question I've been wanting to ask, bro.
put up a poll. Put up a poll,
Yeah.
users.
Does it distract you from what's being discussed on this show? All the elements in my background?
Does it
Listening to
scream?
someone, suddenly you're like, oh, I wonder what that yelling.
I am actually wondering what's that bottle. I'm like,
Cheyenne, see? See?
Gin
Especially somebody
bottle.
like me, if like attention, like if
I
I'm
was
watching
gonna
my own
say,
cast, I'll be like, oh wow.
yeah.
Oh, who are those Brazilian players? And then I have a game where I try to guess, you know, and then I completely lose sight of the whole load.
That's so funny. I was gonna say, does the wallpaper scream like ADHD too much?
That's like it's dude, I'm the one with the wallpaper. It bothers me. Like I feel for other people with ADHD. They're watching it like, oh man, sorry, I cannot watch this. Yes.
just watch Sab with just sound. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but this is if I mean if you can help us, this is the most important question actually. Because nobody has been able to answer it for me.
And how are you gonna solve it? Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll buy like a screen, like
Oh.
there's a white screen. I just put it up, you know, behind just to Or I don't know,
I
man.
feel like it adds
We'll
personality.
figure it out.
Yeah, I like
You
it
s-
this way.
And
This
mine's
is
like
what you said in the first
forward.
episode as well, when I had this discussion with you. You said the exact same thing. And
Oh.
every episode, I still have the same
Yeah, you have this
struggle.
Because every episode you have like now you have the fridge there. Like what the
Oh,
hell
yeah.
is the
Oh, yeah.
fridge doing there? It wasn't there in the
Yeah,
first.
yeah, it wasn't there. Even this bottle of gin wasn't there. This game tickets to ride wasn't there. These boxes were not there. These poker chips were not there. Were not here. A lot of things changed actually. Okay, you're right.
But yeah, anyway.
Serves as a more of a distraction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
People will go back and see the first episode and see this episode and be like, oh, I wonder.
Maybe I'll
what-
do a carousel of like each episode and your background. And then
Like a real, oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one.
yeah.
Okay, that's a good one.
Okay, anyway. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you in our next episode. Yeah. Hey, how did you do that?
See,
That
I
was
also got some emojis now.
Ay.
It was like that time when mommy did that.
I know. I prepared this time.
You worked it out. Hey.
Emoji.
All I can do is this one. This
Yeah, I don't know how. Mommy had a special tool.
one. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.